In this video, I wanted to do a very brief introduction to glycolysis, which is a pathway that we're going to be talking about more in future videos. So what is glycolysis? Glycolysis literally comes from glyco, which implies a sugar, and lysis, which means to break up. So basically, glycolysis means splitting sugar. Which sugar in particular are we splitting? You probably already know this. The answer is glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule. So is this process aerobic or anaerobic? What we'll find out is that this process, well, first of all, what is aerobic? Aerobic means requires oxygen. Anaerobic means does not require oxygen. So glycolysis is actually an anaerobic process because no oxygen is required for glycolysis to occur. Okay. How many steps is glycolysis? There are actually 10 enzyme catalyzed steps to glycolysis. And the way I kind of think about it is there are two phases, one being the investment phase, the second being the payoff phase. So glycolysis' first 5 reactions would be considered the investment phase, in which we invest 2 ATP, right? So normally when you invest anything, right, if you invest money in a particular company or idea or something, you expect some sort of return, right? And you expect and hope the return is larger. So in the payoff phase, which is just the second 5 reactions of glycolysis, we actually make a total of 4 ATP. So if you think about that, 4 minus 2, we actually net 2 ATP. So part of the purpose of glycolysis is to create ATP. But in just a moment, I'll mention a few other things that glycolysis is important for. We have to keep in mind, where in a cell does glycolysis occur? Glycolysis occurs in the cytosol, right, or the cytoplasm. So it does not occur in a membrane-bound organelle. Other pathways, it's important to keep in mind where these pathways actually occur, and I'll get to that later, but bear in mind that glycolysis occurs in the cytosol. Now, one thing I want to mention before I go on about whether this is an oxidative or reductive pathway, we're taking this glucose and we're actually splitting it up. And I mentioned just a moment ago that glucose is a 6-carbon molecule. So in one round of glycolysis, we take one glucose molecule, which is a 6-carbon molecule, and we turn it into 2 3-carbon molecules called pyruvate. These are 3-carbon molecules. Okay. So knowing this, is this an oxidative or reductive pathway? Well, is it an anabolic or catabolic process? Well, if you watched the last video, you probably remember that anabolism is the building of macromolecules or building of molecules, and catabolic means the breaking down of molecules. So in this case, we're taking glucose and we're making it into 2-pyruvate, 2 smaller components. So this will definitely be a catabolic pathway because we're breaking something down. Now, if you recall, I mentioned ARCO, right? And ARCO is just a short acronym to help you remember that an anabolic process is reductive and a catabolic process is oxidative. So this process is an oxidative pathway. So it's an oxidative catabolic process. Okay, and it's catabolic because we're taking glucose and we're breaking it down into a simpler component. Now, if we start off with one glucose molecule in glycolysis, and that one glucose molecule goes all the way through, what do we net in terms of products? So what are the products of glycolysis given one glucose molecule? Well, one of our products, of course, is that we get 2 pyruvates. Excuse me. We get 2 pyruvates, okay, and we net 2 ATP. In addition, we also create 2 NADHs. Okay, so what is the point of all these different things? The pyruvate has different possible fates. Let me note that here. Depending on whether or not there's oxygen available, which I'll get to later. There are many different fates possible, not fats, fates possible for pyruvate. It can go on to the TCA cycle, or it can be fermented, which again we'll talk about later. 2 ATP, which of course can be used for energy, and 2 NADHs, which are supposed to go to the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain, okay, to be reoxidized to generate energy. Again, we'll talk more about that later, but hopefully that was a good little introduction as far as what glycolysis is all about. Thanks for watching.